What's going on, FTI community? Welcome to the In Your Studio podcast presented by Brothers Brewing. In this week's session, I'm joined by the Canadian singer-songwriter who we've been celebrating all week here at FTI, Sno Daze. Sno Daze is a very true to himself individual who has a huge discography full of melodic, alt-inspired tunes that anyone in the FTI community can enjoy and relate to. But before we get there, I want to talk about our new podcast partner, our favorite Guelph brewery, Brothers Brewing. Brothers has stuff you can do, stuff you can eat, stuff you can drink, and people you can meet. And 7 days a week, you have a 99.9% chance of walking into Brothers and experiencing a fun and unique event. This includes karaoke, performances, craft nights, live concerts, and so much more. Brothers is also the home of FTI's Creators Connect events, and I won't spoil it, but you may want to familiarize yourself with Sno Daze because you may catch them at an upcoming Creators Connect event in 2026. And one last thing, during this podcast session, we're going to be announcing the first Brothers giveaway, so keep your ears peeled because you won't want to miss it. All right, I won't hold you up any longer. Enjoy the conversation with Sno Daze. FTI community, I am joined by an incredibly talented Canadian musician who has been creating music for just over 5 years. He has a variety of alternative indie rock songs that strike a powerful balance between vulnerability and vitality, and they are consistently finding their way across many of my playlists, such as Nosebleeds and Silver Hour. He, alongside his bandmates Jacob and Nick, are consistently bringing their sound across Ontario, playing in cities like Guelph, which is my hometown, Toronto, Oshawa, Hamilton, just to name a few. His story is one that I'm very excited to unravel because of the themes and the pre-interview research that I was doing. And I was like, I need to dive into this because I relate very heavily. FTI community, please help me welcome the phenomenal Nolan, aka Sno Daze, to the In Your Studio podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Super stoked to be here. And yeah, it's a long time coming.
Very long time coming. And I know I've already mentioned it. I don't know if I mentioned it outside of Jimmy Jazz when you and I met for the first time previously, but it's because Dylan Lorman introduced you and I of Couch Barrel, of course. And then getting to meet you in person after 5 years was kind of like a very long time coming.
Yeah, shout outs to Dylan for sure. Day one legend.
And I think, honestly, to talk about Dylan really quickly before it becomes the Dylan Lorman podcast, what I really enjoy about Dylan is just how much he enjoys putting his friends on and how much he always supports his friends. And that goes such a long way because without people like Dylan, I find that it's very hard to know like the talent in small towns like in Acton or Rockwood or Georgetown. When it comes to going to the beginning of your career, although I don't know if I know much about you as a person. I know your discography, I know your music. And what I really enjoyed was in the pre-research, how you started from writing songs in your dorm room in 2017, fast forward to present day, mesmerizing dozens of rooms Canada-wide with your beautiful tunes, your melodic sounds, and the themes you write around not only paint a picture of who Nolan is, but they also resonate with the listener to really relate to you as a musician. Always putting your creative foot forward and chasing your dreams to become a musician. You took the dark days from the past and created a beautiful path forward to chase your future. But let's start with Sno Daze. Introduce us to the man behind the persona. Who is Sno Daze?
Sno Daze is me. I think I can kind of say that for certain right now. Though we've been kind of in a little bit of a change state, I would say, as a group since like 2023. I started making music on my own, like you said, in my dorm room in like 2017. I had moved away from university, or to go to university rather, and I was like kind of like a newbie at guitar playing, but I was like finding myself alone a lot of the time, and I was really into a lot of like, I don't want to say sad music, but like sad-ish music. So I started kind of teaching myself how to play guitar and like maybe sing along with it. But none of the stuff I was working on at that time, I really like released. So I don't consider my project as Sno Daze into coming into existence until like around the COVID, sort of time frame. And that was just a name I had chosen. I had done other things musically, but for me, that was like a time when it became more of like a thing to put a name to. but I was like an online artist for a very long time. We didn't really do gigs or performances pretty much at all until 2023. So before that, I at the time felt like I was like kind of faking it as being like an artist because I was making music online with like 4 songs that we had released, kind of like basement recordings, which was like the better EP. But then it took a couple years to get things like, I guess, up and running for me. But yeah, it's always been kind of like a solo project, but now we're incorporating. I have 2 permanent band members now, Nick and Jacob, and at least in a live sense, we're becoming more of like a group. And I feel like that's kind of like inevitable when you're doing as many shows as you can with the same people over and over and over again. Like we tend to like rub off on one another when it comes to like our influences or what we're listening to at the time. So I think live it's become more of a collective effort, I would say. But my early recordings were mostly just like kind of like my art form, I guess you could say at the time.
When you say you didn't really like feel complete as an artist because like there was like no live show experience, did you kind of view the Sno Daze project as something kind of like personal, but you still shared it? And it was really when you took on the live shows, you said, oh, we're running with this. This has like legs behind it.
I think for me, the time that I was like an online artist primarily, like it was good because I wanted to start something new. I had been in like another like band. I don't like saying like it was a band because like compared to the amount of gigs we do now versus like those gigs I was playing in that other ensemble, it doesn't really compare. But I was making music under a couple different like names or like monikers. Um, but I liked the anonymity of the name at first. And the whole Better like EP for me came about as a result of making just the one song, the title track from that EP. I made that when I was in Seneca College for music production, and we had to like one of our culminating assignments was you had to write, record, and produce an entire song. So like that was my submission for school. And then when the world kind of shut down in COVID, I wanted to make like maybe 2 or 3 songs. It turned into 4 songs that I thought would like fit nicely with that.
Yes.
At the time. So it's not that I was like hesitant to show anyone, but it's an interesting time to be kind of like finding yourself as an artist when the entire world is shut down. Because like pre-COVID, I was very interested in like the idea of like doing gigs, meeting people, like networking with other bands. But partly because I'm a shy person, it always felt, and especially because I didn't grow up here in Toronto where I live now. So whenever I would go to a show or like see that a show was happening, it always kind of felt like it was maybe like I would be excluded from that. And that's not to say that like the people that at least we've connected with in the scene aren't like amazing and have been super welcoming and kind to us. It's more of like it was like a vulnerability thing for me. And I think for me as an artist, looking back, the years between like the Better EP and promoting that as little as I did, and then making our second EP, Silver Hour, were like difficult because I didn't know where I wanted to take the project. And at the time, it's funny now, but like at the time I was like scratching my head, still wondering like who's gonna come along and book me, you know? And it seems so naive now because every little bit of traction or gig that we've done as a group has primarily only come because we either know someone that's putting on like an event or something like that, or we're booking it ourselves. So I don't know if it was like I wasn't ready to take on that like entrepreneurial side of what it means to be an artist, but I also like didn't know how, and I really still don't know how. Like I'm lucky enough to have people around me that like help us a whole lot when it comes to doing like shows, especially out of town shows, and making that work. But yeah, I don't know. The beginning part of it was interesting, to be wanting to be a part of what was going on, and then, but at the same time, not really knowing how, or not having like practically any live music or live gigging experience like at all. I had to learn like really quick that what's required in like a gigging scenario is very different than when you have all the time in the world and it's just you and your laptop like in a basement.
It's time for a podcast giveaway. We're teaming up with our podcast partner, Brothers Brewing, to give away a $25 gift card to the brewery. And whether you're listening on FDI's YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, the rules for entry are super simple. In the comments section, let us know what kind of events you enjoy attending. Are you someone who enjoys concert experiences over theater performances, improv classes over wrestling events, or vice versa to both? Let us know in the comments. The giveaway ends on Friday, February 20th. And if you're not local to Guelph or close to the brewery, do not worry, because we have a giveaway prize for you too. Good luck to everyone who enters. Let's get back to the conversation. Yes. I think what a lot of people probably silently realize when they get into like something they're passionate about, it doesn't necessarily need to stay behind in art, but like you need to almost kind of like be a fan experiencing it, rather than going like, well, if they did it, I can do it. But all of that seems so far to like reach. It doesn't feel like you can reach out and grab it, but it's exactly like you said, the connections you build, the circle you build, having your passion as a business is one thing, because it's always so hard to like balance the two out, because sometimes you can become so consumed by wanting just to book, song, that you almost lose yourself in the battle. I would say, I know personally, I've lost myself to like the algorithm and trying to like find something next for FTI. Then I realized like, just sit down, breathe, understand like you're doing it because you're passionate about it. When it comes to almost, I guess, like looking at Sno Daze from like the business standpoint of like making sure people know there's an EP on the way, a single on the way, to show them their city. How do you take that on just to make sure that you're going to that city to have fun, instead of just saying, I played Guelph, now that's off the bucket list?
Yeah, I can't really. Well, first of all, Guelph has always been very kind to us. Like every time, like coming from acting, like growing up kind of near Guelph, that was always like a place that seemed, I don't want to say like attainable in like a negative way, but like I would go there and I would see like a music scene happening, or like people doing live music in some capacity. And I always thought like, oh, like that's happening like kind of like right down the road. Like you don't have to go like an hour into the city just to be a part of like a small community that's happening. So Guelph has been amazing. But for us, like when it comes to like booking shows, I truly cannot take credit for doing that. Our bass player, Nick, we worked together at a music store in Toronto, but I had kind of like just met him. He was like a new hire for us, and he heard one of my songs, I guess. And it's funny, like the first day I met him, he was very like, hello, my name's Nick. I'm in a band. I book shows. This is what I do.
Yes.
And I didn't know how to like react to that. Like I didn't know that we would quickly become very close friends. But he was like, my band's playing this weekend. Like, and I remember like walking away from that, being like, that is like an entrepreneur type guy, like that he's coming up to me within 3 minutes of knowing me. I know what he does, who he does it with, and when their next like live. I'm like, that's such a good like elevator pitch. But he had offered, because he heard one of our songs. Like I had been rehearsing with our now drummer Jacob for quite some time, and I had him in the studio a couple times. So him and I kind of already knew each other, but we had been rehearsing with a couple other like kind of like rotating players throughout that time. And at that time we didn't have a bass player. So he said, oh, well, I'm booking this show, or no, he said, I'm booking this show in Ottawa. And I said, where are you booking at it? And it was at a venue that my twin brother worked at. So I kind of like bullied him into booking me there. And then he said, okay, after we did that show, it was a great night. And he said like, okay, I'll do bass for you for one show so we could do it with the band in like December. And so it was only ever supposed to be for one show, but he stuck around, and he's actually the individual, for us at least, who not only booked like some of our first gigs, but continues to do that for us. I It's not that I'm not good with organization, but that's really not my strong suit. So Nick's role behind the scenes has been kind of doing that coordination with venues and promoters. And it's been really like, I literally would not be like where I am right now with how many gigs we've done. I mean, like, we're still a relatively new act, but like, we wouldn't have half the experience we do without all the shows that Nick's booked us on. We did like our first kind of like mini touring experience was with his other band. They're called Whisper Gang. We did like 4 shows with them. And that's, I think, for me, where like I really felt like attracted to the live side of things, because it was just like such an adventure. And of course, everything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Of course, especially in a live setting.
Yeah. Both on the stage and off the stage, like getting to the stage. I mean, we were towed at Jimmy Jazz the last time we were there. I'm not even kidding. We were towed, and the other 2 bands that played with us were also towed because apparently they had some event.
Yes.
But we love Guelph. But yeah, Nick handles all of our bookings. So for me, that makes it relatively easy. For getting eyes on the project in like an online sense, I do put like a lot of like some attention towards it. But it's kind of, for me at right now, it's like, it's hard to juggle the attention of like wanting to be like a competent live musician and performer, and then also doing all like the back end admin work. So it's constantly like a struggle for us, but having someone at least in my camp who's booking all of our live dates has made that a lot easier. So like when we release a single on the business side of things, we'll like maybe send it to some music blogs or radio stations and just kind of see like whatever hits, which is always fun when that happens. But for me, I feel like right now as an artist, as cool as it is to be on a playlist on Spotify, and I mean, everyone's taking their stuff off Spotify these days anyway. That's a whole nother conversation. But as cool as that is, it's also equally as cool to like shake someone's hand at a show, and make that like real connection. So I don't know. I want to get like a lot better at like the admin stuff, especially as we start to do like more shows and start to try to continue to monetize the business. But for me, it's like, I love this so much that like it almost doesn't matter that much to me if like we do well at door on the one night at tour where we're not really familiar with the crowd. I to this day, I haven't really bought into like a lot of that like ad stuff. I know that like that really works for some artists, but I try not to think about it like I'm making a product.
Correct.
Essentially.
I think that is the most important thing, is knowing that like, although it's like a product of love and a product of passion, just as long as it's not like a product that like a new listener, new eyes can look at it and go like, okay, you came up because you paid Instagram $30. Now you're on my feed. Because you don't really get like that, like, as you mentioned, like that connection to like shake your hand after a set, because that's a real person. This person was, for lack of a better term, forced to see you on their timeline because you paid for it. And I think a lot of people really underestimate the value of seeing 50 people in a room enjoying your music rather than 50 people listening on streaming. Because I know from past experiences, having conversations with a handful of artists, they really almost not give up, because that sounds way too dramatic, but they almost just kind of like have doubt about why they're creating. And it takes one person in person to kind of go like, man, I really love what you create. And all of a sudden you just watch their eyes just spark. Like they're like, this is why I do it, for this conversation, rather than because Instagram I gave $30 to. When it comes to your actual bandmates, I want to dive into this a little bit deeper because I think it's really interesting the stories where like it's usually like a one-off performance. You meet someone at the right time. How did the chemistry come from you guys, like the three of you? Was it really fast or did it maybe take a few like studio sessions or live shows?
So I kind of explained like me and Nick, kind of like how we met. I mean, we worked together, and at one time, our drummer Jacob also worked with us. We ended up like vouching for him so he could get like a job at our music store. Um, so that was kind of like how we became like fast friends. But Jacob and I had met because someone else who was working with me on some of the stuff for the project, like really like early on after the Better EP came out, but like I would say in like 2022, 2023, had offered me like a studio session at this like real studio, which is typically not like the facilities in which the great team of Sno Daze records in. But someone had offered me a session and he said, "Hey man, do you have a band, right?" Like, and I was like, "Yeah," like we had rotating members. So I just said yes. And he's like, "Okay, great. Well, there's this like studio session tomorrow night at this time at this real studio. It's completely free. There's some students from this school that want to track." But like I didn't care about that. It was like in one ear out the other. So I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, I totally have a band." So like three of the musicians I know, but I couldn't find a drummer. And one of my friend Ryan, he was in like another band with a couple of his university buddies, and he said, "Hey man, you can borrow my drummer. He's down. He listened to your Spotify stuff." And I said, "Okay, great." So we texted him the address. He came. We did the session. It was like, again, like not usable. Like what we recorded that night never saw the light of day, but we did that once, and then like literally a year and a half went by, and I got offered another free session at another studio.
Let's go.
And so I called the only guy I know for these situations, because I'm not like a social butterfly in the music scene. So I called him and he came in and we ended up getting like snowed in at that like studio session. And it was a night we'll never forget. Like it was like a couple of years ago, there was like one night where like literally 3 feet came down like in the middle of the night and nobody could get home and the gardener was crazy. And that was the night. So I feel like him and I had chemistry. Like shortly after that session, he asked me, he's like, "Hey, if you ever like start doing this, let's do it." So I rehearsed with Jacob for like about a year before we met Nick. But yeah, we're an odd bunch when we're out there in the world doing these shows. I feel like we have that chemistry. Just because we have a lot of like Nick and I think have a lot of the same musical influences. So like we listen to a lot of the same music with just slightly different flavors. But I find it interesting that Jacob, as a drummer, is very intrigued by, I think, technical drumming. And me as a songwriter, it's like never my first instinct to think about like a drum fill, like, oh, the fill going into the drop. Like that's not what I'm thinking about when I'm writing the lyrics and playing them on my guitar. But that makes for a really interesting combination because he's like a very skilled, very technical drummer who like he listens to like Gojira and like heavy bands, but then we'll also listen to like some Frank Zappa style weird 6-minute long jazz fusion track. So like that makes him like as a musician to me very interesting. But yeah, Nick and I and Jacob, we all worked together for multiple years, so that's kind of like how we became fast friends. And then obviously, rehearsing every week and doing a show all the time, being in the car with these guys, you kind of become, for better or for worse, one entity in that way.
Yes, especially having like the trio where you started off with a love for music, but now you guys really know each other with the ins and outs of each other. I think it's really funny to think that you were snowed in and then Sno Daze is the name of the project. It was like it was meant to happen.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. I want to jump back now into your music because we didn't really get to touch on the music yet. A personal standout from your discography for me is your 2020 EP, Better. And I vividly remember it was mid 2020. FTI was still doing like newsletters, but they were so ugly. They were so bad. But you specifically gave me a chance to make FTI feel very important with like the Guelph music scene. So we put Better in one of the newsletters. I have it somewhere on the Seagate
Hell
hard
yeah.
drive. I remember at the time, because of Dylan, he was just like, you need to dive into it more. And I was just like, there's just limited tracks for me to like listen to. I'm going to listen to as much as I can, but like, it was like the cusp. It was really wanting more, but there wasn't more to dive into. Take us back to this 2020 EP, kind of from like, not only your perspective when you were at Seneca, but especially with all the monikers you went through to really nail down this one track that became an EP.
Yeah, I had been trying to do music in a couple different ways. Before I started working on the material for that EP, I had initially, like I said, started out in my dorm room with just an acoustic guitar and a microphone, and that to me kind of like always felt like home. But as the years kind of shifted after that, after my time I ended up transferring to Guelph University. I went there for 2 years. Um, when I went there, I kind of had another group of friends who were doing music, and I had a bunch of songs at that time. And we started playing as another like band that was kind of more moving in like the indie rock direction, which is why I think it's funny that now it's like our newest EP is more like in that realm. But at the time, I felt really turned off by the whole like indie rock boom that was happening. This would have been kind of like 2018, 2019. Um, I still love like a lot of those bands that were huge back then. Um, and some of them still are, but I wasn't really like into making that kind of like surfy, poppy, indie sound. So for me, the only logical way forward, because I'm not very good like with like music technology, was to go back to like the guitar and vocal approach. And then my original idea was like, what if I just did acoustic guitar songs with good vocals, and then I had just got this really nice tube amp at the time of Vox AC15. So I was like, okay, and some electric guitar, but only clean. At that time I was like, we're not doing any distortion, no distortion whatsoever, which again makes me like laugh now because I love distortion. But yeah, that was like the idea for the project. But for me, like as an artist writing those songs, I wasn't really thinking a whole lot about like what was going into them. But had been coming out of like a relatively like tough time in my life and like my journey as like finding who I was. So I was kind of like sad a lot of the time. And that's what the title track Better is about. It's like for me, I kind of use that as a way of like putting a milestone on the moment on that moment in my life, because it was like me aspiring to fix some of the things that I had been dealing with at the time. Um, and that for me was like the main whole reason of making that EP. But I ended up writing a couple of like three other songs that I thought were really good and kind of like fit with it. Um, but I always find it interesting when people say that like they're like attracted to that EP, because when I listen back now, I hear like so many like flaws because I didn't really know what I was doing. But I think that really hit home on like the theme of like nostalgia. And now for me, at like even as young as I am, 27 now, it seems laughable to me that like I at that point in my life felt like, oh, like this is it, man. We tried. Like this is the end of whatever it was I was doing before this, and these were kind of like my sad songs. So yeah, and then I made it during COVID too, which was I definitely think had its mark on the music. But the cover that Dylan ended up making for it, that photo on the cover is a photo of me and Dylan and my twin brother Jacob when we were all like 3 or 4 years old.
Oh, snap. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that's us in my backyard. And I made that we did like a series of like prints for that record that went along with that kind of book cover, album cover artwork. And so my twin brother helped with that too. So we made like, it was kind of like a deep concept, but we ended up making the concept for those was like as if Sno Daze was a big band and they had like tour material that would have been printed out, and then a fan has taken that and put it in a book and written all over it. But all of the photos in those like tour promo were photos of me, Jacob, and Dylan when we were like 6 years old.
Let's go. Okay.
Yeah. So it was like a super weird concept. I did not come up with that idea. I have to give that.
That sounds like a Dylan idea.
It was a Dylan and my twin brother idea. But it looked really cool. Like, and I think that visually, for me at least, helped like bring home that feeling of like nostalgia in the music. Because if there's one thing that people tell me about when it comes to that record, it's like it's somehow nostalgic. But another funny kind of like thing, I at the time, because I wasn't very good with music production, was like, oh, this is like the most high fidelity, like most hi-fi stuff like I've ever made. This sounds killer, man. And then like I put it out, and then like I have so many people come up and tell me like, oh, it's so lo-fi, it's awesome. Yeah, and it was a humbling moment because like for me it was like the first time I was hearing my vocals on recording where it was clear and you could understand the words. Like, yes, I was kind of hiding behind like a mumbly vocal presentation method at the time. So, but yeah, I just think that's so funny because I was like, this is my It's Over record, and it's also super hi-fi. Here you go, world. And the world goes, this is a great nostalgia record that's
it's low.
Yeah. So yeah, I find that funny to this day.
I relay for survivors and their families.
I relay for my best friend Morgan's dad, Al, and my 2 cousins, Stephanie and Samantha.
I relay for my dad and for any families affected by cancer.
Relay for Life at the University of Guelph is an overnight event where students come together to celebrate survivors, remember loved ones, and raise money for the Canadian Cancer Society.
It's a night full of themed activities, food, music, and team spirit, all while walking the track to show that cancer never sleeps, and neither do we.
Register now using the QR code on the screen and check out our Instagram at UO Relay.
Do you think if you were to revisit that project today, it would still resonate with who you are?
I think, yeah, definitely. Those songs are like really personal to me. The first one is about like kind of like getting over like someone that wasn't like getting over like a relationship that like wasn't serving either person. And so that felt personal to me at the time of writing it. But then the other 3 songs are about the person I was falling in love with at the time, which is my girlfriend who I live with now, Hannah. So it kind of felt like even through the track list of that, we are kind of trying to get better or we're growing, because they weren't all written at the same time. So like I tried to release it in a way that was like chronological. So I think that's helped with how I continue to perceive it. And how it's stayed personal with me, because it's like me at my purest at the time is how I felt. Like I remember showing it to my mom, and she like had been listening to like all the other stuff I had been working on with other people and before that under different names or whatever, and she said, this finally sounds like you, which
Let's go.
Yeah,
yes.
Which is why I wanted to put it out. But now it's like, yeah, I don't know. I listen back now as an artist or someone who's now trying to get a lot better at like mixing music and figuring out what I like in a song and why it's written that way and understanding theory a little bit more. I listen back to that record and I'm like, why did I do that? Like, but I think that's like unavoidable for anyone who's making music.
And almost like anything at all, because like you're always going to critique what you create because it's a creation of your most vulnerable and the thing you're most passionate about. When you fast forward 5 years to May 15th, 2025 being this year, your most recent EP, Silver Hour, the opening track, almost you could already tell there was such an evolution with Sno Daze because it's that beautiful orchestra of instruments. It really like sets the tone, the experience for like the listener to know they're going to enjoy 5 great tracks. And then like the closing song, 3 years, putting a bow on it all. It's really, I know I just said it, but I can't stress enough. It's really easy for the listener. And I bet the bandmates and yourself to enjoy the growth and see the growth as a musician. When it comes to Silver Hour, what's the conception there? Like, how did that come about and how did you want to really separate it from Better?
So the title track Silver Hour, that song is over 10 years old. It was written before Better. I feel like I did write about the same person, Hannah, who I'm with now, when I was kind of just meeting her at the time. And then I sat on it for like 2 years and then was getting over some stuff and made Better. But like that song is like super duper duper old. I wrote that song when I was like 17, almost 18, maybe 18 or 19 years old. So maybe it's like an 8-year-old song, something like that. I don't know. But yeah, that one's really, really, really old. And then the second track, Nosebleeds, I wrote when I was just after, like a couple weeks after I finished making Better. I had thought at the time, I was like, I found the perfect formula for a song. Like, let me just put it in every key, like three chords or whatever. So I did that and I sat on it. But that song originated as like an acoustic demo. And it had very jazzy kind of like swing drums on it with like ride cymbal. And at the time, and I sat on that demo for years, and I was so married to the idea that it had to be like a swingy kind of like jazzy version, that like I think that like held me back a lot, because once we started playing it live with the band, like it's like the first night we played it, it was like loud. It was like decently loud. But then like after you play it 20 more times, like we're amping up that song every single time we play it. It just becomes like an absolute belter.
Yeah.
Naturally, like on its own. So by the time we brought that one to the studio, again, like it was a super old song, like probably like 5-ish years old, 4 years old or something like that. It had totally changed. Like the Nosebleeds demo is like half tempo of what the song is now, which to me sounds crazy. And there's some days where I like, now I'm like, oh, what if we like release the demo like just for a meme, because like people will not recognize it. And then the other 2 songs on it, Where You Been, I think that for me is the most personal song I've ever written, just because it's like a concept song about like, what if I was talking to the version of myself that was alone in a dorm room writing songs. That's kind of like the thinking behind it. But that one was written sometime in like 2022, and then 3 years is the newest one. 3 years, I wrote that kind of like after we had been playing with the band a little bit. And I think for me, that's my favorite song on Silver Hour, because you were talking about like evolution of band members. That for me sounds the most like us as like a tight group song on that record. So yeah, 3 years is definitely my favorite. But again, a lot of those songs were like old songs that I had kind of like had with me. Those 2 sessions I was talking about earlier where I brought Jacob, my drummer, those were 2 previous sessions where we were trying to record Silver Hour.
Understood.
And those versions never came out just because like something was always wrong or something like that. But that record to me, I feel like that felt like things getting off my chest, because most of the songs, like half of the songs on Silver Hour, were songs that I had with me while I was writing Better, but I just didn't feel like they belonged on the project. and I was kind of really married to the idea of like 4-song like EP. Like I don't want to mess it up by like overcomplicating it or adding these songs. So I kept them in the vault for a very long time. So it kind of feels like for me as an artist to release that, it feels good. And it's even more satisfying when it turns out in a way that like I'm happy with how it kind of like evolved. But it felt like getting things off my chest, I would say.
I really appreciate and I really adore how, I guess, open-minded you are to just not your music, but just who you are at all these moments in times, like all these different chapters. Because I think as an artist, it's very important to always make sure you can see yourself in your art instead of going in something that's trendy, something that can maybe like catch eyes really quick. But you've always honed in on like Nolan. How's Nolan feeling right now, and how can I make it the most relatable one-to-one reflection of Sno Daze? I noticed that all of these are either singles or EPs. Do you have a grand idea for like a debut album where you really want to make something that's fully, completely Sno Daze or even Nolan?
I do, but I don't want to mess it up. Like, like if I want, like, and maybe this idea is holding me back, but like the kind of market we're operating in right now when it comes to like music, I still view that as like a single driven market. So I don't necessarily feel held back by the idea that one, my catalog may be a little bit smaller than maybe some of the other artists you've talked to, or two, that I need to have like a record out. Like I don't feel that need, like I don't feel held back by the EP format. I like the EP format because it's like, here's 20 minutes of ideas that I'm liking right now. And then it's like, I like the idea of like starting fresh. But for me, there seems to be like an inevitable line as an artist that you cross when you go into like making an entire full length album. And I still have songs that I'm sitting on that I know are good that I want to put on that. But sometimes I write a song and it's like, I know that like, I don't even have the budget to make this as big as I want it to sound. So I might sit on it for a year or two, or like try to keep working on it in some way. Cause I really don't want to like compromise in how the stuff sounds. I want it to keep getting like better and better and better from like a fidelity standpoint, but also like a songwriting and performance standpoint. So I feel like daunted by the idea of like a full record. For me, like ideally it would be perfect. Like if like we got this to a point where there's traction and we're putting out singles. Like I'm not saying I won't put up music, but if I'm putting out singles and we're getting traction, and then someone can come along, whether it be like a label or another opportunity or something like that, where it's like, okay, now we have the time and resources to make this record I want to make. Like I want my debut record to be like nothing can be perfect, but like I really want it to be like a huge thing. So like, yes, I'm sitting on songs, but like I don't feel held back by the idea that like I could continue to release like singles and EPs and continue participating in the scene here and not have that like hinder me, I guess you could say.
I don't even think that would like hold you back, honestly, ever as a musician, if the rest of your music career was like singles and EPs, because at the end of the day, it's what you want to share with the world. It's what you want to release. And it's so important to always keep like your idea of perfect, because everybody has a different definition of success. Everybody has a different definition of perfect. So if you were to like put an album out, just to say you have an album out, I could already see you wouldn't be satisfied unless that's exactly what your definition of perfect is. And I really think it's interesting that you talk about how like the world nowadays with music is single driven, because we're just consuming so fast. And I sound like a broken record, that almost releasing an album is kind of like daunting in itself, because like the reaction, the reception, the buildup is so fast that right after you're on to the next thing you want to create. That like singles and EPs are not like the safe route, but the most realistic route to just ensure that you're having fun and that people can keep up with the career. And on the flip side of that, it actually struck something in my brain right there was I've been a part of the Guelph art scene for a little while now, and everything FTI has done has always been just funded by me entirely because I've never known where to look for grants. I've never known where to like look for support. And I was recently shown like, hey, apply for the Ontario Art Grant, Guelph Art Council grant. And it's not that I'm turned off by it because I'm sure I could maybe apply and bring an FTI idea to like a bigger reach or maybe a more grand idea. But I always feel like if I put like a label on something that wasn't fully funded by me, it's almost like a product. It's not just something I brainstormed in my office one day. So the grant idea, have you ever thought about like a grant or something of the sorts to bring an idea to life?
Definitely thought about it. I feel like as a performing and recording artist, kind of like at our level, it's like I would say like an inevitable next step for someone like us. It's again though, like I want the time and resources to like truly be able to do this. And that in and of itself, on top of music promotion, reaching out to blogs, like luckily we live in a country where there's a relatively, I'm not going to say it's amazing because there'd probably be a bunch of people saying, oh, we need more money for artists and stuff like that. Which I would generally agree with, but there is like some relatively available funding to people in kind of like my position. But what that entails is usually you would either like if you're writing the grant yourself, some of these grants, to my understanding, and this could be completely different to what it is now, but this is what they taught us when I went to college for like music production. We had like a little class on this. You would either like hire someone like a grant writer to write your grant for you, or you'd write it yourself. And it can take some time to kind of get it together, in a sense where like you're submitting a business plan now, and maybe an expense report, and they're going to check in. They're going to make sure that their work gets done. So I think like that is something to consider as well. I feel right now as like a artist who's trying to write, record, and perform as often as I am, but also working a full-time job and trying to have like a stable like work-life balance. I feel like I'm torn as far as where my attention can get diverted to. And truth be told, like right now, I don't have like all the time in the world to be like, probably like I could be submitting to more blogs, more stuff like this, or working on more grants. But I do think like it is super necessary, especially for smaller artists. It can help you a lot, but depending on your situation, you may not be eligible for all like funding. Like some of these grants, they will rank your kind of like grant application account as a certain thing. So certain doors are open, certain doors aren't open. I don't necessarily feel like hindered by the idea that like we don't have the money to make an album, because also I don't have the time to make an album currently. When we made the EP, we recorded all the stuff at my cottage like last September, and then I worked on it pretty much 4 days a week for all the way up until May. So like the better part of a year. And it was like super stressful. So like,
Yes.
For me, I really struggle like as an artist with like how I'm perceived. And I also struggle with the idea of like, if I know I have a good idea, but I can't execute it in the way I want, my instinct will tell me like, put it out. But I have to kind of like fight that. So I felt a lot of pressure to like perform in a studio sense, because we didn't make the record in like a big studio. We made it in my friend's basement with tracks we recorded at the cottage. And I think you can definitely tell when you listen to it. But that in and of itself poses some challenges that wouldn't be there if you had like all the time in the world in like a big studio. I definitely want to move in that direction though. Like as far as grants go, like it's something that like I've been looking into, and I think it's something that other artists should look into as well, because there is funding out there and there are people trying to at least support like good art happening here in Canada, which for me, like I think Canada is a really cool place, and especially with everything that's going on to our neighbors down in the south right now, it seems like really intriguing for me to want to be like a Canadian artist, to make connections with Canadian media, to do this here. And I think that's a really cool and exciting thing. So the grant thing, like I'm generally pro grant. I don't feel like I would be hindered as an artist if I slapped like a Factor logo on my record, because let's face it, like if you're pressing vinyl and making physical media and doing merch and going on tour, that is like so expensive.
It's
like,
so expensive. Yeah.
It's like, it's ridiculously expensive to do. And you have to, like, at least at our stage, you have to do it for the love of the game. Because if you think you're going to make like a huge profit margin on some of these things, it's really difficult. And it's physical media. I love physical media, but like if we pressed vinyl, it'd be like a large investment. And then we're trying to look at like, how do we get this distributed? How do we, like, are we selling it at consignment at a certain store? Are we selling it at shows? So I think that the help with that kind of thing comes with the grant money. But there's tons of different grants that you can apply for as a musician in Canada. There's like video grants, there's recording grants, there's touring support in some cases, but there's a bunch of different like arts councils that you can go through. So it's definitely been on the mind, but truth be told, until I'm ready to like invest another year, maybe year and a half of my life into a larger batch of songs, it's not like a huge focus for me.
Do you find with, I guess, like the September to May of like working on Silver Hour with the idea of maybe like a more grander project, or maybe even like something that you're trying to, I guess, stop yourself from like doing right away, like that fight you were talking about, do you at least feel like the relief and like the sense of like, I did that as success? Or are you more just like relieved that it's out for like the world to listen to?
I wanted, by the end of like making that EP, I really wanted to be done with the whole thing. I feel like me as an artist, I struggle with like pressure, and this was like not a EP that I was making in my bedroom by myself with no one telling me to. We wanted to sync up the release of the record with our tour that we were doing. So because we had to reach out to the venues really, really early on, we had a hard deadline for when the EP was supposed to come out. And then I'm, scrambling to meet that, whilst also we were at the time that like crunch time for mixing and mastering the EP was the same time that we were ramping up rehearsals and going on playing like multiple shows every weekend in and around Ontario. So like that for me was really difficult. I felt super relieved to have it done. I would say, like, there's still things like that I wish maybe could sound different on that EP, but I'm generally pretty happy with how it turned out. I feel successful in the idea that like that for me was probably one of the first times that like almost all of my ideas were executed in the way that I wanted them to be executed, and that in and of itself is like just very, very satisfying experience. Yo, what is good, FTI community? It's Nolan. Just popping on for a little commercial break here to let you know that we are playing a big show in Toronto at the Horseshoe Tavern on Thursday, February 5th. The doors are open at 8. Tickets are $15. You should totally come see us live. If you get down with the sound, we'd love to see you out there. And hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast. Peace.
And just like, I'm sure you're told it by like your family, your friends, your girlfriend, just everybody around you. But I think the most important thing that I will ever say to you is making sure that this mentality that you have, that you've had for probably over a decade now, always stays true, because you have such a unique perspective and you're so aware of what you want to do with music that I think you're someone that will always view it as a passion and never really let the business side or like the product side get to you. Because this whole conversation, I've just been tying what you've said on how I can now take what you've said, put it in my own mind and work on it towards FTI. So I really appreciate not only this time, but getting to like dig into your brain. As we head towards the end of the conversation here, it is time for my absolutely favorite question. I think this whole conversation was the question wholeheartedly, but it is the topic of vulnerability. Maybe switching the question up a little bit. If vulnerability didn't play a factor in your music, and I hope this makes sense. If being vulnerable didn't play a factor in your music, do you think you would resonate with your music? Does that make sense?
No, I don't. Like for me, like I'm often trying to like chase the sounds that I like listening to when I'm making my own music. But as a lyricist, I'm really, I think, attracted to songs that lean into vulnerability. I don't tend to write songs from a perspective like of someone else or like a fictional, like kind of like a character study way of doing it, which some artists have great success in. But for me, the vulnerability is the one thing that I have to like inject into the songs to maintain some sort of ownership over like if I had like a chord change or a guitar sound or something that maybe could be like conceived as like, ooh, what are we doing there? Like at least I know that it's fully me.
Yes.
And so I don't know. I don't think it would be I don't know. I don't think I think for me that's an important thing to have. I tend to write a lot from like my own experiences rather than like looking elsewhere, but I want to be honest in the song. Like I will try to like change things if I feel like sometimes I'm maybe too on the nose for something. I'll maybe change the perspective or like how can I say this in a way that I'm like not really saying this, but I try to maintain that like at least that sentiment.
When it comes to Jake and Nick as well, are you the primary like songwriter, or do they ever kind of like chime in and put in their own emotions and experiences into the songs?
Lyrically, it's mostly me.
Okay.
Musically, I let these guys pretty much have free reign as to what their parts are. So like
Gotcha.
if a lot of my songs will start out on like an acoustic or sometimes electric guitar, but beyond that, when it comes to like a bass line, or like a drum beat, we kind of like figure it out in the room. So there isn't really much direction I as like the band leader need to do to like tell them to do that. But like the lyrics for me, I feel like right now I want to sing. It sounds cheesy, but like I struggle with covers sometimes because I feel like I want to sing from me. Like my voice as an instrument is tied to the words
Yes.
that I'm saying, just as much as it is to the notes. So that's not to say that like I hate all covers or anything. Like my band will watch this and be like, he does it. No, but like I feel like that idea of like being me when I sing is something that like has kept me in love with the idea of like songwriting as a whole. Like I sometimes as an exercise, they like in music school, they would say like, oh, write a song from like so-and-so's perspective.
So difficult.
Yeah, very difficult for me, at least, like for me to do it and then also be believable. Like I want to put out something as an artist where it's like you listen to the song and you believe that someone actually felt that way or that that's happened in real life or you believe that I don't know. I want it to be real. Like I want you to believe me, I guess.
I am making sure at the time of the release of this podcast, everybody who has ever had self-doubt of being an artist, being a creator, just being passionate, listens to this session specifically because there is so much to take away. Please believe Nolan.
Yeah, that's
that
episode. Please believe Nolan McGillivray.
and it's not even it's not even an In Your Studio podcast. It's just a whole separate entity.
A monologue. You're not even there. It's just everything. I just supercut, baby. One after the other.
It just goes.
Run it.
Man, I think that would probably be the most popular FTI piece of work ever.
Oh yeah, motivational. David Goggins. You can do it.
You can do it. Not limited to one medium. Please choose as many as you would like. Put the FTI community onto some new things to check out. Maybe like music you've listened to, a film you watched, a game you played, anything and everything is on the table.
Let me think. I haven't been doing very much of anything interesting. Music I've been listening to. There's an artist that Nick and I are good friends with, and his name is Corbin Hawkins. He's got an EP called Go Out and Do It, which I really like those songs. I really like the way they sound. He's an amazing guitarist, and he's got an awesome falsetto. For like huge releases, I've been listening to this record called Thinking Too Much by Joshua Sloan. It's a country record that came out like last week. It's phenomenal songwriting. It's like 10 out of 10 songwriting. I don't know if I have anything else.
Okay.
That's what's on the top of the mind. Yeah. Listen to Sno Daze. Follow my bandmates. Shout out Jacob and Nick. I'm going to say it 5 times. Jacob and Nick, Jacob and Nick, Jacob and Nick, just so that if they ever listen to this, they don't think that I didn't shut them out. Jacob and Nick are huge to me. Yeah, those are my recs.
That is Jacob and Nick for the ones who have not heard that.
Jacob and Nick.
FTI community, we are putting a bow on Nolan's Creator of the Week here. Not only was this a long overdue conversation, but I say it almost every week. It's really got to connect me to the artist because we've been talking for so long digitally. I think this is only the second time we've ever actually talked.
IRL conversation.
I can't encourage anybody enough to check Sno Daze on all streaming platforms. There is a Bandcamp, there's an Instagram, and then odds are if you live in Ontario, there's a show near you within the next few months. Yeah. I hope everybody has one fantastic day. We'll catch you later.